Hi, I'm Shayna LaFleur. I'm coming to you from Madison College's School of Professional Development and Continuing Education. And today we're going to talk about keeping kids connected. We'll talk a little bit about virtual and non-traditional playgroup and party ideas. And this is something that I am steeped in. I have two little ones. I have an 8-year-old and a 3-year-old, so I'm doing a lot of this stuff. And I'm just really excited to share some of the things that I've learned. Most of what I'm going to talk about today comes from personal experience. I have a background in elementary ed, and I taught in schools for overseas and here for quite a while before I went into adult education. So I have a little bit of background in that, and we'll go more into that in just a moment. So first I want to talk about real quick here, something that's incredibly important. Connection. Connection really, really matters. And we know that right now that can be really challenging, especially for our little ones. Many of us are working from home, and a lot of our young ones are schooling at home, and everything is virtual right now. And that can really turn a world upside down. It can be scary. It can be stressful. And what studies have shown and what the evidence tells us is that connection can really help offset the negative effects of stressors in life. So connecting to people that we love and people that are supportive improves our mood. It increases our self-esteem. It reduces anxiety. It even supports our immune system. There's lots and lots of research that shows that having strong connections helps us physically as well as emotionally. And it helps speed recovery when we are ill. So really, really important at all times, but especially right now with all the stuff that we're going through. So we're going to talk a little bit about how we can cultivate those relationships for our children when they're not able to go into the classroom, or maybe they're in the classroom, but they're not able to interact as freely as they used to. They can't go to the Children's Museum or some of the other activities that maybe we would have helped them with, and parties and all of that. So a little bit about why I'm so interested in this topic and some of my own experience. So during this pandemic and the stay at home, I've been drawing on past experience quite a bit. I lived overseas for about 6 years. And during that time, to go back, when I decided to move overseas, I didn't know a soul. And I left, I got a job, and I decided I was going to teach overseas for a while. And I really experienced that sense of self-isolation. And when we entered the stay at home, I kind of went back to that same place of, oh my gosh, this is scary, and I feel lonely, and what do I do? So I thought, what did I do when I was far from my loved ones, when I was living in another country and everything, my whole world was different and I had a new normal? And I really focused on nurturing the relationships I had with people that I loved, even though we were apart. So that was writing letters, making phone calls. Social media wasn't really a big thing at that point, so I didn't have that tool and that technology. So I was using some of the old school methods, just making a phone call. But now we have all these amazing tools at our fingertips that we can use. And I know that a lot of us are getting Zoom fatigue and screen fatigue. So we're going to talk at the end just about how to balance that and some alternative ideas to the virtual parties and things that I'm going to go through in just a minute. Before we jump into content, I just wanted to ask if you wouldn't mind, if you feel comfortable, just jumping in the chat for a moment and letting me know what age kids you're considering creating events for. And you might want to say, hi, I'm Sarah, or I see the names, I'm Cassie, I'm Brenda. Pop over to the chat if you would and tell me what age you're going to be planning for. I hear typing. 11. Library. Yeah, so lots of ages. Excellent. Preschoolers, elementary age, 8, 9, and 11. Excellent. So we're kind of in that mid-range, elementary. Excellent. This is good. So a lot of what I'm going to talk about is geared more towards that middle elementary school age into all the way up through high school, and then talking just a smidge about the little ones, the really little ones. I have a 3-year-old, and that can be really challenging. So this is great. Thank you for sharing that. Like I mentioned before, my children are 3 and 8. So I'm constantly thinking of different types of activities to keep them entertained and happy and connected and supported. So the first thing you want to do before you dive into actually doing the events is just take a moment and plan, just like you would for any sort of event. You want to think of what you're going to do, and you don't have to make, it's not like you're planning a wedding or a graduation party or anything like that, although you can do that stuff online. I would suggest right now, keep things fairly simple. So here are just a few key things you want to consider. You want to think of the number and age of children. So how many children or youth are you going to be inviting to this event? And what are their ages? Clearly, you want to make everything age appropriate. When and where this is going to happen, like you would with any sort of event, a time, a date, and then where, meaning what platform are you using? Is it Zoom? Is it Skype? Is it FaceTime? How is this occurring? Planning out some activities. What will they do? And I find that this is even more important with virtual interaction than having a play date at someone's house, because that can happen a little more organically. When children are sitting in front of a screen, it can be challenging to think of, well, what are we going to do now? We're just staring at each other. And the play doesn't always unfold organically. As they do more activities that are less, that allow them a little more freedom, and they can mold and be flexible with that structure, they're going to start thinking of things, but the beginning guidance is really, really helpful. Many of our youth are familiar with Zoom or with the screen if they're schooling from home, doing the virtual learning, but most of the time that's fairly structured and they're guided through that, so that they may get screen shock, like sticker shock, if you plop them in front of a screen and say, okay, play. This is helpful. Communication with the parents of the other youth who are going to be participating is also really helpful. You want to be able to know what kind of devices they're using, if there's any obstacles to entry. Do they need assistance getting into the Zoom room or wherever it is you're hosting? Supervision. So depending on the age, how much supervision is there going to be? With my 8-year-old, what I'll typically do is if I open a Zoom room for her and her friends, I will be the host of the meeting. As the meeting starts, I will admit people as they come in the room, and then I'll have my device in whatever space I'm in, and then she'll come in as a participant in another space, but I can monitor from afar, so I'm not hovering over the computer and the other kids aren't seeing me hovering over the computer. So I can be in another room. I can do that even on my phone. So depending on the platform that you use, it's nice to be able to have yourself as a host and then have your child. You can make them a co-host or make another student a co-host depending on their age, if that works. And then deciding, are these reoccurring events or is this a special event? So with my 8-year-old, we have a reoccurring open playgroup party on Fridays, and anyone in her class can join. And the communication with the parents at the beginning was kind of challenging because it's not like when you drop your child off at school, you can have a conversation and say, hey, we're having a playgroup. So I actually went through the teacher and I asked, would it be okay if I sent you an invitation to the class? And you could send that out to the parents, and she was agreeable. So having a relationship with the instructor can be really helpful. Or if there's another type of virtual class or class of any type that your child or student is participating in, talking to the instructor or the supervisor there can be helpful to help with that communication piece. And then once you have that contact information, it can go from there. If the students are old enough, they may have the email addresses of their peers, and they can help with that process. I still craft the emails in the invitations just so it's very clear and simple, and we'll include a link. So now that my daughter's done this a few times, she can send that out to her friends. The parents are aware of it. So that's really helpful. And the Friday Zoom just set up on a reoccurring meeting, so that one link, they can just keep coming back to the same room, which is really nice. So the main bulk of the content today are going to be these 3 points. We have the virtual playgroups, which I talked about just a little bit, special events, which you do a little bit extra flair with those. And then maintaining a balanced lifestyle, we'll have just a little smidge at the end talking about that, because I think it's really important to note, especially because we're all in front of the screen a lot. Virtual play dates. These are actually lots of fun. So the things you want to think about as you're moving into this: who are they going to play with, when and where, and what type of activity. So when you're deciding who they're going to play with, decide that with your child, just like you would with, any other play date. And that may seem like that's an obvious thing, but I like to make note of that. Have a conversation with your child, because they may be thinking of people that you wouldn't have thought of. You're not seeing that organic talking in the hallway at school, so you may not know who they're creating relationships with in their classroom. So having them being involved from the go creates buy-in, because not all children enjoy being in front of the screen. I think they would all prefer to be running around together. So getting them excited about it from the beginning and having it be, their idea in some respects, walking them through that process. Connecting with the parents and guardians to set parameters, to ask, what are you comfortable with? So if you're planning on using any sort of game apps, or different types of activities, making sure that you're just like you would with a regular play date, asking and they may have ideas too. And this is another way to create some connection for you, so that you can sometimes inspire other parents to do the same thing, so you're not the only one who's hosting the parties. Although parents are very appreciative when you do. I've had parents drop donuts off at my house and call and say, this is great, thank you so much, because it is really challenging right now. It's not just an automatic, oh, let's call up and have someone come over. And then be prepared to be very hands-on at first, and especially with the younger ones. When they get to be that 7 years old and up, a lot of the Zoom type meetings they can start to handle on their own if you set up the link and get them in the room. With the younger ones, you're going to want to be with them the whole time. So let's say you're setting up a play date with a 3 or 4-year-old, and you're doing an activity like you're going to be doing, and those should be probably pretty short, 20 minutes of puzzle time with a friend, or you have some activities set out and you just have another child there on the screen. That is helpful, even though they may not be speaking. That parallel play at that age is really important. So considering that you're going to be fairly hands-on, and that may continue throughout depending on the age of the child or the youth that you're working with. When and where. So of course you want to confirm schedules, that's a given. Then what devices are being used? So what devices that the other families have available will help determine how you're going to structure this play date. If you're both using, let's say, Apple iPhones, they could FaceTime, right? And that's really easy. So sometimes my daughter has play dates with our neighbors across the street, and they'll just FaceTime. And that's pretty simple. The mom will call my phone and they'll watch a movie together, and that's really fun. Other times it'll be Zoom, sometimes Skype. Not exactly a play date, but my daughter does have playtime with her grandparents who live in Italy. And so they'll often do that on a Facebook Messenger app that's made for children, but you can connect to adults. And she's talked to them pretty much every day since the pandemic began, which is much more than it was beforehand. Usually it was once a week. So that relationship has actually grown quite a bit. And then there's a variety of other platforms that you can use. So talking about those two pieces is important to decide, where is this happening? And then you're also going to want to look at the internet connection. How fast is the internet? Do you need Wi-Fi? I'll talk about why this is important a little bit later when we talk about outdoor type activities that you could do. And then are there any passcodes or parental controls or passwords, things like that, making sure that everyone has all the information, just like if you're having a party, people have the address, they know where to park, et cetera, those types of logistics. And most importantly, when you're starting out, keep it really simple and just think fun. Don't overcomplicate things. Keep things pretty simple. 1, maybe 2 activities, and then I would say always give them some free time to let it kind of grow on their own. But you want to give them a launch pad to start from. So the types of activities are really going to depend on the age of the child, clearly. Like I'd mentioned with my 3-year-old, it might be calling up our cousins and having, a 10-minute conversation. Even that small touch point really matters. It may not seem like a lot. It may seem like, oh, it's a lot of effort for 10 minutes. but they remember that. And then you can talk about that. You can take a picture of it and look back at the picture and say, oh, remember, last time we had a play date with your cousin Mirabelle, and how fun was that? We can do that again next week. And it just gives them something to look forward to. You want to make sure that it's interactive. Again, I mentioned that you're going to be guiding it through, and allow all participants to participate. And be aware that not all children like to be on the screen with video. So if you notice that there are children who are not, they don't have their video on, maybe encourage your child who is hosting to go into the chat and talk to them a little bit. Just making sure that everyone has the opportunity to participate. If there's a game where one person is the lead, or it's something like charades, making sure that everyone gets a turn so that everyone's involved. And of course, the activities are going to vary depending on the device and the platform. So we're going to look at a lot of different types of activities. I'm just going to kind of run down this list. And what I'll do when we send out the replay of the webinar, you'll get this list with some other things on there so you can refer back to it. Feel free to take a screenshot. These are just some of the things that I have found helpful and fun. So at the beginning, arts and crafts. This definitely works best if guided, at least to get them started, letting the parents know in advance what materials they might need. So it might be finger painting or watercolor. It might be a drawing activity. When we did my daughter's birthday last spring, we had an activity where they drew what is the most fun thing you've done while staying at home, and trying to give them a little bit of a theme and then let them go from there. But it can be kind of daunting to just give them a blank page and say color. So you want to give them a little bit of a start, and then they'll go from there. Do something messy like making slime, or making Play-Doh, stuff like that. And some of these you may need to involve the other parents. Like usually stuff that is pretty messy, you want to make sure the other parents are on board, and they may need to be there for the beginning for that piece. They make the slime, and then the rest of the play date they're playing together and being silly. For the really little ones, things like water play, building with blocks, imaginative play, and puzzle time. So water play, you could actually, and winter is coming, right? But you could actually get them in their swimsuits and plop them in the tub and have, a little bit far away so it doesn't fall in the tub, have the screen there, and they can play, so they can have their water play with a friend. You can set up different activities on the floor and have the screen there. Like I said, blocks and puzzle time, imaginative play with their stuffies or their little toys, things like that. And those play dates, again, are usually pretty short because they lose interest and wander away. But don't think just because they're wandering away, that means that it wasn't a success. Again, that parallel play is important at that young age. Games. So you'll notice down at the bottom here, I said no apps or software needed. So these are all activities that you don't need to have anything installed. You could play charades. You could play Finish the Story, where you give a story prompt and then they go around the group and add on to that story. There are ways of playing Pictionary, where you can, I'll put in the PDF like word generators, or you could yourself be generating the words or the themes, and then they can play Battleship. So if both families have certain board games, there are some that you can play just like you would if you were in person, and Battleship's a great one because you can't peek. Name that tune, where you'll play a piece of music and then they have to guess what the song is. Bingo. Headbands, one where you have like a word or a personality and you can improvise with this. You can send parents a PDF of things beforehand. So you get creative. Don't think it has to be like the store brand version. Get creative, get the spark of the idea, and then just kind of go from there. Doing a lunch bunch. They started doing this at school, and occasionally we'll do it for dinner now too, where you invite one or two friends to Zoom with you while you're having a meal together. That can be fun. Or have a cooking buddy, like cooking a meal together. So you have your screen in the kitchen and you're mixing the ingredients. We've done making cookies or making homemade pizza. And even if both families aren't doing it, can still be fun for the other person. So sometimes it just happens spontaneously. My daughter will be talking to a friend. We're going to make some dinner. Why don't you invite her to come in and do dinner prep with us? Dance parties are fun. The freeze dance game, things where you can get them moving. Simon Says, things like that. If you have youth that really enjoy music or that play instruments and they're missing, like band practice and things like that, set up, a practice time, a rehearsal time, whatever it may be, so that they can still do that. And it can be less structured than what they would get at in their school class with music, and they can goof around a little bit. Karaoke is another fun one. Another great one is just reading stories together. If both, you can either check and see if both families have the same book and you can read back and forth to each other, or you can find there's some like books online and they can both be in this, and that's a little bit more complicated, but you could do that and they could read back and forth, have them act something out. This summer, a group of the students from my daughter's class put on Hamilton. And that was, I didn't host that one. That was a huge endeavor. So they each had their roles and they got to sing them, and it was just for fun. They could take a virtual class together. There's lots of free classes or low-cost classes out there, one-time classes, or it could be something reoccurring. I know there are some dance studios that are doing online dance classes. It could be karate. The Scouts are doing a lot of online activities. So those are things where maybe your young one feels a little uncomfortable going by themselves, but if you have a friend doing it too, that can help them reach out and make new friends online. And then outdoor activities, walks, hikes, scavenger hunts, and the like. This one you'll need to have cellular service as opposed to Wi-Fi. Everything I've mentioned before can happen in the home or close to a place where you would have Wi-Fi. So, I have a little device for my daughter, a phone, but she doesn't have a phone number. It's just used for this type of activity. And so you can buy a used smartphone for pretty inexpensive on eBay or something like that, and do everything Wi-Fi. Same with an older iPad that you don't need to have all the latest apps. You could use that, or a different type of device. Or a computer works too. If they like to be mobile, something that's small, it can be helpful. But for these outdoor activities, I typically let her use my phone. Sometimes, like yesterday, we went for a walk together with one of her friends, and she actually, with her mom, went for a walk at the same time. So that was fun. A scavenger hunt, and then virtual sleepovers. This actually just happened organically with my daughter and one of her friends. They decided that they were going to start doing virtual sleepovers. So on the weekend, they'll actually pack their bags and they'll go into a different room of the house, not their own room. They'll set up a fort and they'll have their backpack, and then they'll stay up to like 10 or 11 or whatever it is, and have their virtual sleepover. So that's a lot of fun. They enjoy doing that. I feel like I missed the movie night. Yes, I did. Pizza and movie night. That's a fun one, or just movie night. There are some apps you can use to watch movies at the same time. I feel they're a bit complicated for the little ones. So what we tend to do is we'll call a friend on FaceTime or we'll Zoom, and then we'll queue up the movie at the same time. I don't know if you ever did this when you were younger. I used to do this. And I remember my mom doing this, calling someone on the phone and watching the same movie and watching it on TV. Now with Netflix and other streaming, if you can just get it to the beginning and then hit play at the same time, and you can get it pretty close. And sometimes they'll mute and just chat while they're watching it. And it's fun. They seem to really, really enjoy that. So that's another one that's just really easy. Some activities that you would need apps or software, things like Minecraft, Fortnite. There's Jackbox games. If you just Google Jackbox games, there's a bunch of games that are hosted there. Mario Kart Tour, I believe that one's free. Uno. House Party is one I just discovered that I'm going to explore a little bit, actually, with some of my friends that have like card games and things like that. And it's like many of these, it'll have a room, like a private room that you can enter and play the game within that room. And again, these are things that are a bit more complex. So either with older children, or you're hosting the entire thing and you kind of rehearse it beforehand. Monopoly, Connect Four, all these things, you can find them online. Oh, we're getting close to the half hour already. So special events, virtual parties. So 3 things I want to point out about these. The logistics behind the virtual parties, kindness from afar, some things you can do to make those events special for kids, especially birthdays is a big one. And then making it special beyond the virtual, what else you can do to surround that party so it feels longer. Because oftentimes those virtual parties are shorter. An hour, maybe 90 minutes is kind of the sweet spot, especially if you have an activity, but not too much longer than that. So your virtual party, you want to plan it like a typical party, just knowing that the location is online. Pre-plan everything, send out your invitations. letting people know how to get into the party, what's expected, let them know what kind of activity is happening if they need to prepare anything. If you want them to all eat together, you could say, have some snacks or cookies available. You could even, if you wanted to really go the extra mile, I did not do this, you could create a little package and send it out to all the families if you're really wanting to do that. I didn't have the bandwidth to do that, but that's something you could do to make them feel like they're all, participating together. And then guide and make sure all the guests have digital access. So if there are any guests, put in your invitation. If you haven't done this before, we can do a run through beforehand, because you don't want to spend the first 20 minutes of the party getting through tech stuff. So if there's anyone who finds it challenging, maybe walk them through that first. And then guide some sort of activity or have a special guest appearance. So for example, for my daughter's birthday, you can see there, she's sitting there with her little brother. We've got the screen up there. It was before any guests had arrived, so it's just reflecting them on the screen. We had an art activity where they shared their favorite thing they had done. This was back in May, so it was pretty early on. And then we did have a special guest appearance. I met a friend through a Facebook group who actually is an actress, and she'd played Glenda the Good Witch in a theater version of The Wizard of Oz. And so she actually, I didn't tell them who was coming, but I said, someone magical may make an appearance. And so she came into the Zoom room and went around and talked to all the kids about their drawing. And it was really, really cool because they weren't expecting it. And it was very magical and fun. So sprinkling in a little bit of magic, especially with those little ones, can just make the whole experience feel a little bit less sad. I'm not having a party, my friends aren't over. And at the end of the day, my daughter said, that's the best birthday party I've ever had. Oh, it made me feel so good. So you can make it really special for them, even though you're not doing it in person. Kindness from afar. So other things that you can do in addition to or in lieu of a virtual party, you can have a drive-by parade. You can have, I sent out a note on Facebook and just said, anyone who would like to send a birthday card to Julia, message me, I'll send you my address. And we had like probably 30 people send cards. And then to make it a little extra special for her, she has you can see it in the background, she has her elves and her fairies. And so her elves and fairies hid the cards kind of all around the house, and she had to go looking for them. So that was a fun way to kind of extend that party feeling. And then surprise decorations. We had a couple of friends who came and decorated the yard. You can see the sign in the background. They put the sign up and left balloons and things like that. So you can still have these surprise type things, make it fun and exciting, even though it's not the same as it typically would. And you can do that for any holiday. We just did a Halloween event where it was my daughter and my son, and we had it themed. It was a Star Wars theme, and they both had Star Wars costumes, and we planned out a bunch of games to do throughout the day. And we didn't go trick-or-treating, but I did have them dress up a little early, and we just did kind of a parade around the neighborhood. So I try to do some of those similar activities that they feel like they're missing, but just in a different way that's safe. Making it special, right? So adding in those surprises, like I'd mentioned, the cards, she wasn't expecting those. Little things, surprise them with a special meal. Build the day beyond the party, like I'd mentioned, those other activities that make that party feel like it's stretched out longer. And then focusing on the positive and reminding them that different is fun. So I didn't talk about missing your party or you can't have a party. I just spun it as, we're going to do it different this year. We're going to make it as fun as possible, and getting her involved in the ideas of what we could do and what she wanted to do, and having her ask her friends, and just making it as something different and special. And again, I go back to my years when I was living abroad, living in Italy, and what did I do that made moments, my first birthday there, I had just moved there. How did I make that special? I had, phone calls and things that I did. So drawing on your own past experiences is really helpful. As we're coming to the end, I'm going to spend just 2 minutes here on balanced lifestyle. Before I go into this, any questions? Everyone's been quiet, but I didn't ask if you had questions, but if you do, feel free to put them in the chat. Balanced lifestyle. So again, we're in front of the screen a lot, so you don't necessarily have to always connect via Zoom or virtual play date or something like that. You're going to want to mix in routine and spontaneity, and you're going to want to be honest and hopeful. I'm going to go through each of these in about 30 seconds. So connecting in different ways. We'd mentioned the FaceTime movie night and the things like that, but with our neighbor across the street, you can see in the top left corner, they also, when it's warm out, actually even now that it's cold, have walkie-talkie play dates, which is just different from a phone. It's just a little different. So we got a set of walkie-talkies, sent one over across the street, and they can talk to each other. When it's nice out, they'll actually sit curb to curb and play across the street from each other, talking on their walkie-talkie. And they really enjoy that. Sometimes they'll go biking up and down the street when it's cold out. We'll probably do some sort of cold weather, walk or something. So we'll figure that out as it comes. An old-fashioned phone call, just picking up the phone and having a conversation, especially, ages, even a 5-year-old, I think, can do it. Little ones have a struggle a little bit more, but just a phone call. Some of the relatives that may not be as familiar with technology. I know with my mom, Julia and Leo's grandma on my side, technology is not her forte. And so we were doing phone calls. What I ended up doing is just getting her, or when I upgraded my phone, giving her my old phone, wiping it clean and only putting like 2 apps on there. So she could push one button and call Julia and do a video call. And that was it, connected to her Wi-Fi, super easy. So that's one way to involve people who aren't as necessarily as tech savvy. Writing old-fashioned letters, having a pen pal. Trading things. We'll do an occasional Beanie Boo trade with one of Julia's really good friends, where the moms will designate a day and time, and we'll do like a drop. We'll see each other, and the one will drop a bag and walk 6 feet away, and then the other one will come and pick up the bag and take it, and they'll swap it, and then we make sure we clean everything. But that's a way that they feel like they're still having a little bit of contact. And having something physical in your hand from one of your friends can really be powerful for little ones. This was my best friend's Beanie Boo, and now it's in my room, and then they'll be on the phone and they'll talk about it. So that can be a really cool thing for them to do. And then another totally different kind of fun thing that my daughter and I do is every night, and you can see it says day 235 there. I think we're on day 260 something now. Every night we pick a different country, or now we've done all the countries. Now we're on to national parks, and we'll study it for 20 minutes. We'll do a video and we post it out on my Facebook, because she doesn't have Facebook. We'll post it on mine, and then all of my friends will comment on it, and we'll read through the comments and say, oh, I've been to Alaska. Oh, I've done, and they'll share pictures. So she feels like she's getting a little more interaction, just like she would if she was coming with me to visit a friend or something like that. And that's helpful for her as well, to feel involved, and like there is still some normalcy around, I have friendships, you have friendships, look at how we're communicating. Mixing routine and spontaneity, like I had mentioned, we do our weekly Zoom party, so she has something regular to look forward to. But then there'll be pop-up things that we'll do. We'll do something spontaneous, like, oh, it's Wednesday night, let's do, pizza night. Why don't you call up so-and-so, and we'll have them join us for that. So popping in little surprises here and there can keep things from feeling too mundane, because even that regular Zoom party, after a while, it's like, oh, it's Friday, it's another Zoom party. Making something special happen during that Zoom party that they weren't expecting, something silly, whatever it might be. Kids love spontaneity, right? Not all of them, but some of them do. And then be honest and hopeful. So this is something that I talk about in almost all the webinars that I do, just because I think it's really important. You want to be honest with the kids in your life about what's going on, and real about it. We're not trying to sugarcoat anything and say we're just going to ignore everything and just pretend it's not happening. We have to accept that we can't have a birthday party, or we're not going to go trick-or-treating, or whatever your choices are, but then bring hope to it and choose joy. How you position it is how they're going to react to it. So being cognizant of, we may be feeling a lot of disappointment about not being able to take them trick-or-treating if that's our choice. But making sure that you acknowledge, yeah, it's disappointing. We don't get to do something really love, but here's something we can do. Help me think of ideas. Let's be creative. Let's use our critical thinking and our problem solving. And you're teaching them how to adapt and to grow and to, face the challenges of life, because there's going to be a lot of things unexpected that happen in life, and this is a perfect teaching moment for them. So I think that's really important. As we wrap, I want to say thank you for taking the time to be here with me today. I know we're all very busy. If you have questions, feel free to reach out. That's my Madison College email. You're welcome to email me at any time. We will be sending you a replay. I will be compiling some of those activities for you so you have that at your fingertips. Other resources we have for you, we do offer some trainings around youth. Recently, we did a TEDx event, and my talk was about youth and resilience. So feel free to check that out if you want. That's out, officially published by TED as of a couple of weeks ago. So you can search me and TED, and that'll come up if you want more tips. And then we also offer a mental health first aid training for youth. And so this goes a little bit beyond, here we're talking about maintaining wellness throughout. If you find that you are interacting with youth that you see are struggling or that need a little bit of support, they're not even surviving through this pandemic, we do have trainings for that where you can become trained to become a mental health first aider to identify when youth are struggling and how to get them the resources you need. So if you're interested in that, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to give you information on those upcoming classes. They're short. They're like 8 hours total. You actually get a certification at the end. So if that's something that you're noticing, we have a resource for you. So again, thank you. I'll stay on for a few minutes if you have questions, but I appreciate you taking the time today.